story of 14 minutes in the daily operation of a commercial airline. These are important minutes. They illustrate why busy people depend upon today's air transportation to help them keep up with the modern world. At the ticket counter of Capital Airlines in Washington, D.C., the attendant posts a report on Flight 900, the President. It will arrive on time. Capital Airlines Flight 900 is a Viscount, the world's first turboprop airliner. Already in use on 40 major world air routes, the Viscount has cut flying time between cities as much as 30%. The plane is powered by 4 Rolls-Royce turboprop engines, whose speed without vibration provides distinctive passenger comfort. Feature of the Viscount that is not evident to the passengers, a feature which helps Capital Airlines maintain its time-saving schedules. For much of the flight, the pilot has not been able to see the ground to make a visual contact. Even when the ground was visible, the pilot did not depend on locating prominent landmarks for navigation. For the precision navigation required by modern airlines, he uses radio. One Collins contribution to this modern method of navigation has been the approach horizon and the course indicator of the Collins integrated flight system. For cross-country navigation, the pilot tunes in a ground radio station like this, called an omni-range. Since he wishes to fly a course of due north or 0 degrees toward the omni-range, he sets the course indicator at this heading. When the pilot tunes in 0 degrees on the course indicator, he receives only one of the many course signals sent out by the omni-range station. The plane is now receiving only the radio course signal of 0 degrees. This picture of an aircraft represents the pilot's plane on the course indicator. This line represents the course the pilot wishes to follow. On the map, the dashed line corresponds to the course bar. This is a pictorial presentation of the Viscount flight. This picture of a miniature aircraft on his course indicator represents his plane. The direction of flight is always read on the compass rose ahead of the miniature aircraft. The plane is now heading 0 degrees or due north. Beneath the miniature aircraft, a course bar represents the path on the ground he wishes to follow. The pilot knows at once if he drifts to the right of his intended route. He turns and comes back to his original course. If he drifts to the left, he corrects his heading. by steering to the right, and he is soon back on the course again. With the course indicator, the pilot knows his position at all times. This arrow shows that the radio omni station is ahead of the plane. When the plane passes over the radio omni range, the arrow reverses and indicates that the plane is now flying away from the station. In this way, the pilot can navigate from one omni range station to another during cross-country flight. The integrated flight system is a product of the research laboratories and manufacturing facilities of Collins Radio Company. All components of the system are tested under the most rigorous of flying conditions. Collins engineers check the functions of the system for all attitudes and throughout a variety of synthetic and actual navigation problems. Using finely calibrated recording instruments, they supervise lengthy simulated flights under controlled laboratory conditions. In the white room, skilled craftsmen, dressed in lint-free nylon, assemble the flight instruments. Every possible precaution is taken to make sure that injurious dust does not get into the delicate instrument mechanism during the manufacturing process. In the climate chamber, the instruments are subjected to temperatures from 30 degrees below zero to 130 degrees above. As the recording thermometer and barometer indicate, the system is tested at a simulated altitude of 40,000 feet. It is subjected to a relative humidity of 95% for several hours. The steering computer is being tested on the shake table at vibrations which are far in excess of those encountered in normal airborne service. The system must withstand continuous and demanding operation. During shipping, each component of the Collins flight system has its own special protective covering. When the plane nears its destination, the pilot begins his approach procedure. He will use the integrated flight system and the instrument landing system signals transmitted from the airport. Capital 900 calls Washington approach control. He estimates the outer marker at 15. From Washington control, the pilot learns that he is cleared for a straight-in approach. From a position near the end of the runway, a narrow radio beam is transmitted out as if an extension of the runway. This beam is called the localizer. It will show the pilot that he is heading through the overcast in the proper direction toward the center line of the runway. This flat beam is called the glide slope. The plane will fly down it in the same manner an automobile follows a highway down a hill. When the plane flies over the outer marker and the inner marker, identification lights will flash on the instrument panel to give an indication of the distance from the runway. The pilot must locate the intersection of the glide slope and localizer beams and keep his aircraft on them as he descends through the overcast toward the runway. After passing over the last Omni station, he tunes in the instrument landing system and uses the course indicator to align his plane on the localizer. As he approaches the localizer beam, he turns toward the runway. Now that he is on the localizer, which means that he is lined up with the runway, he uses the approach horizon for his final descent. The miniature aircraft represents his plane. The steering pointer shows the pilot the heading he must fly to stay on the localizer. This pointer represents the glide slope. The aircraft is now flying on a level course below the glide slope. When the plane flies over the outer marker, a light flashes on the instrument panel. On the approach horizon, the miniature aircraft is even with the glide slope pointer. The localizer keeps the plane heading toward the runway. The glide slope shows the proper descent. The plane must stay on both beams. The miniature aircraft represents the airplane on the instrument panel. This indicator shows where the glide slope is. The plane is now rising above the glide slope. The pilot eases the wheel forward and the plane returns to the glide slope. The steering pointer shows the pilot how much to bank his plane to intercept the localizer and follow it down to the runway. If the plane is to the right of the approach, the steering pointer will show the pilot how much to bank his plane to come back to the localizer and remain there. If crosswinds on final approach should try to drift him to the left, the steering pointer will again give the pilot correctly computed banking information to stay on the localizer. The pilot follows the glide slope and localizer down through the overcast. When the plane is over the inner marker, the indicator flashes, and the runway is straight ahead. Swiftly and surely, the Collins Integrated Flight System leads today's high-speed aircraft along the radio highway in the sky.
Hi, Bill. Where have you been all morning?
Steve thought to take us down to the airport. Gee, we saw a brand new airplane, too.
You'll have to tell me all about it. What did you see?
We saw a Capital Airlines Viscount. Boy, you should hear it come whistling in for a landing. Skip and I got a book all about it, see? Mr. Grant says it's a whole new kind of airplane. Gosh, it even sounds different.
Sure, I know the Viscount. Your mother and I flew on one last summer when we were in Europe. In fact, the nicest flight we had on our whole trip was the one we had on the Viscount.
What makes it so different, Dad?
Well, son, that's sort of a long story, but if you're really interested, I'll try and explain it to you. The 4 engines on the Viscount are something very special. When you're inside, you can hardly hear them, and there's no vibration at all.
What's vibration?
When anything moves or shakes, it's vibrating. For example, if I take this hammer and hit the boat, you can feel it where you're sitting. Well, that's because the boards in the deck are vibrating. Now, most motors and engines on automobiles and airplanes have vibration because they have a lot of reciprocating parts, pistons that go up and down. Remember? I showed you that at the garage the other day. Well, that's the kind of motion that makes vibration and noise, too. The Viscount doesn't have pistons, but has rotary action engines made up of wheels that turn, and that eliminates the vibration and cuts down on the noise. So if you're a passenger, you get a nice quiet ride, and at the end of a flight, you feel much better.
Here's the book that tells about Capital Viscounts. Would you explain it to us?
Sure. See, Capital calls it a new concept in flight.
For the first time in history, air travel becomes something more than a race against time. Yes, you're looking at the world's first propeller turbine airliner, the Vickers Viscount, powered by 4 sleek Rolls-Royce turboprop engines. For 50 years, Rolls-Royce has made fine automobiles, masterpieces known the world over for their custom construction, precision, and quality. For 40 years, Rolls-Royce aero engines have helped to write air age history. The propeller turbine, or turboprop engine, is their latest engineering achievement. The engine has a minimum of moving parts, which results in a smooth, steady flow of power. Air is drawn into the engine and directed through a 2-stage compressor. The compressed air is then forced to combustion chambers, where it is mixed with low volatile kerosene and burned. The tremendous energy created drives a 2-stage turbine. The power is transmitted by a shaft to drive the engine compressor, and then through a high-ratio reduction gear to drive the propeller. The air traveler benefits not only from the swiftness these jewel-like engines provide, but even more important, he enjoys a quieter, more comfortable flight. The magic of the name Rolls-Royce has become synonymous with class and quality, and its aviation engine division has become the accepted world leader in the design and production of gas turbine engines. To visit the aviation plant is to see the very latest in precision tools, to watch engineers and craftsmen that are proud of the hallmark their company has so justly earned. Rolls-Royce manufactures from the simplest to the most complex components for each engine. The Rolls-Royce aviation engine plant is one of 5 large factories. The company employs over 35,000 designers, engineers, and craftsmen. One of the most impressive things is the standard of inspection. Not a button or a bolt is allowed to pass unless it is precisely correct, virtually without tolerance. Each propeller turbine engine is made with almost incredible care, on the finest machines, with the personal attention of experts. Every creative step is closely examined to ensure perfection. The engine was born of a fundamental post-war belief that the gas turbine engine was the power plant of the future. Almost 10 years ago, the first propeller turbine engine was completed and exhaustive tests were underway to refine it for commercial airline use. The first Viscount flew in 1948 and actually operated on airline schedules in 1950. It is a satisfying thing to know that when final assembly is reached, the finest parts that men and machines can fashion have been wedded for the future service of you and I, the air travelers of the future. As is always the case with a Rolls-Royce product, these engines were developed after years of research and experimentation. They come to Capital with over 100 million passenger hours of safe operation. As each Capital Viscount turboprop engine is completed and tested in action, it exemplifies the Rolls-Royce motto: whatever is rightly done, however humble, is noble. The ideal passenger airplane must also have close coordination between the manufacture of the engine and the airframe. Rolls-Royce and Vickers Armstrongs have been working together since 1916, and as a team, they have designed and built some of the world's most famous airplanes. The Vimy, first aircraft to fly the Atlantic, piloted by Cockrell and Brown in 1919. The Schneider trophy plane that established the world speed record of 407.5 miles per hour in 1931. Remarkable when you consider the date. And everybody will recognize the most distinguished fighter plane of the last World War, the Spitfire. Today, as in the past, the team is working together on military projects like the massive four-engine jet bomber, the Valiant. And the most modern of all commercial planes, the Capital Viscount. When the Vickers-Armstrongs and the Rolls-Royce design team went to work on the Viscount, they created an airframe and a turbine engine that suited each other perfectly. An airplane that would pamper passengers with swift, smooth, silent, and sure flight. To satisfy a growing passenger preference, Vickers-Armstrong's gigantic factories are turning out more and more Viscounts. The fuselage metal is sprayed with a plastic covering to protect its clean lines until first flight. As each new plane gets its engines, wings, and wheels, technicians move in to complete the many final assembly details of wiring and cabling. After months of precision construction, each Capital Viscount gets its colors. But even before its maiden flight, exhaustive ground tests are run. Engines are checked and rechecked. Instruments are proven. To qualify for the Capital Fleet, each plane must fly on 3 engines, 2 engines, and even on 1 engine. Viscount will get you to your destination in the shortest possible time, whether your journey is 200 or 1,200 miles. Through the largest panoramic window on any airplane, the world is yours to see. For the first time, even passengers in aisle seats have an unobstructed view. No, it's not a trick. Viscount flight is so smooth, you can build a tower or balance a quarter at 25,000 feet. America's top industrial designers selected the attractive interior furnishings, created color harmony, and arranged the deep cushioned seats in comfortable pairs. For your enjoyment, you'll find a personal table on the back of each seat that quickly and easily slides into a level position. A table to rest your book or beverage, to hold your food tray for a more enjoyable meal. The luxury of the Capital Viscount is a quiet elegance, once known, never forgotten. Passengers around the globe have come to recognize the advantages of the Viscount. Tourists to England are as impressed with it as they are with London's Big Ben. The Viscount is a familiar sight at Orly Field in Paris, familiar as the Arc de Triomphe and the Eiffel Tower. The Irish have a name for it, too. The ruins of Athens, the beauty of Rome, are hours closer thanks to regular Viscount service. Around the world, Australia, Africa, India, South America, Canada, and now, the Viscount, a global favorite, brings swift, smooth, silent, and sure flight to the greatest industrial centers of the United States. Yes, it's a new standard of service, the Capital Airlines Viscount, accommodating millions of travelers from the Atlantic to the West, from Canada to the Gulf of Mexico. You know, you've been riding the cockpit of airplanes as long as I have.
the real thrill to see a plane like the Viscount come along. It's tops with the pilots. The 4 propeller turbine engines get it off the ground quickly. It climbs beautifully, handles easily. Landings are a real pleasure. And above all, it has plenty of reserve power. And of course, up front, you'll find all the latest radio and navigational equipment. Now, I've been talking a good deal about the plane's passenger comforts. Well, believe me, you'll find those same advantages in pilot comfort. You see, after long flights, pilots are less tired thanks to the lack of vibration and noise. It's a wonderful plane to maintain. Why, you can change an engine in just 30 minutes. As a matter of fact, the plane is built so that you can perform routine maintenance checks right on the ground without having to use ladders or stands. Why, you even fuel the plane on the ground, no more wing climbing. And of course, this all adds up to fast, efficient ground handling, which in turn means more dependable, on-time passenger service. The Viscount is another milestone in aviation history, a brilliant history of progress and public service. Capital Airlines is proud of over a quarter of a century of serving air-minded America, and we're extremely proud to be the first carrier in the United States to introduce the Viscount with its 4 engines. Truly a new concept in flight.